Welcome to Boston Real Estate Times. Our guest today is Dean Blackey. He is Managing Director at R.W. Holmes, which has served for the last 45 years commercial real estate industry in Boston and around the greater Boston area as well. We are going to talk to Dean about manufacturing space. So Dean, welcome to our show.
Thank you, my friend.
And thank you very much for your time.
No problem.
This is the first time we are doing, right?
This is the first time, yes.
So let us start with, we hear a lot these days about the manufacturing space in Greater Boston. Is there really a crunch of manufacturing space in this area?
In the area, yeah. The short answer is yes, but not necessarily for all the reasons that you would think.
Okay.
Certainly, I would venture to bet that, manufacturing demand in Massachusetts has never been higher, but there's a couple other things at play here that are putting some downward pressure on being able to find space for those manufacturers. And again, they come back to the principles of supply and demand. So let's start with supply. Every month that seems to go by, the supply in the market for space that would be conducive to a manufacturer is just being wiped off the map. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. Let's use an example. If I had 30,000 square feet, here in Waltham that was single story flex space, 10, 20 years ago, I would do, number of showings, and I guarantee you, 9 out of 10 people would all be, traditional manufacturers, people who made widgets, people who, semiconductors, whatnot. There is a whole new slew of other industries where that space works just as well for them as it would for a manufacturer.
So basically you're saying that even the type of manufacturing space demands, depending on who is wanting this space, has also changed.
Yeah.
In the recent years.
Well, and more specifically, the competition. So that same piece of 30,000 square feet of, single story flex space, you might have a biotech company looking at it. You might have a robotics company looking at it. You can't discount recreational uses. I had a manufacturer the other day. We were vying for some space and going back and forth, and we knew there was another competitive use. It turned out to be a pickleball, user. So there's so many people who are vying for that type of space right now that it's really putting pressure on a manufacturer to try to, stay within the same geography that they might have been. And then the other thing, as I say, is a lot of the space is just getting wiped off the map because developers have come in over the last, 5 and 10 years and decided that, let's use the same example, the 30,000 square feet, with the ability to go vertical, and the ability to put parking underground, that now piece could be, 100,000 square feet of life science. That could be 100,000 square feet of multifamily. And so little by little over the last, I would say 5 years or so, we've had hundreds, if not millions of square feet of industrial and flex real estate that has just been wiped off the map. And as you know, in Massachusetts, we don't necessarily have a lot of excess land to replenish that supply.
So let's talk a little bit more about all the various types of manufacturing space. If you could give us.
Yeah, no, and that's changed, over my tenure as well. I mean, again, years ago, you would really just think of manufacturing as, somebody who produced a product, put things together like assembly and whatnot. Now we've got a whole different slew of industry types, as I say, like robotics. G&P is a big thing now. And basically, G&P is facilities that are designed to adhere to the strict regulations of like FDA for when you're making pharmaceuticals or medical devices and whatnot. Another one that I think is that we're beginning to see a lot of, and we will see more, is, renewable energy and battery production.
Sure.
We've got a company in our backyard in Natick, electric hydrogen, and they just took down 200,000 square feet in Devons for what they call a gigafactory, to produce these hydrogen batteries. So, as the technology changes and whatnot, there's all sorts of different,
so now we
definitions.
see that there's a lot of nervousness about the office space.
Sure.
Because of the pandemic, people working from home and all this stuff. But at the same time, you see other sectors are really doing very, very well.
Sure.
Now, if you look through your crystal ball and tell me that over the next 5 years, I know it sounds like a long time, but how the space dynamics, the manufacturing, industrial, office, retail, how is it going to play out in Greater Boston?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see the demand getting reduced, but we're going to have to start finding new ways to house these people unless we want to lose them, I think we all predicted the demise of specifically manufacturing space 20 years ago, and that really didn't happen. I mean, certainly a lot went overseas and whatnot, but I think the desire, like any place in Boston, to be near higher education, to have the talent for, research and development. You see a lot of, when we say manufacturing, if we were in the Midwest, someone would call manufacturing a 500,000 square foot, factory. We don't have that in Massachusetts.
Sure.
It's at a lot smaller scale, but because of that, there's a lot more R&D, as I call it, and where they're advancing the technology, and maybe they do have facilities overseas, but that's really what's happening here, and it's being drawn by the fact that the talent and the people who are advancing these technologies is coming out of the university.
So if I'm a tenant looking for a manufacturing space, what will be your first advice to the tenant?
You just can't start early enough looking for it.
Mm.
There has been so much rent escalation in this type of space, again, for the reasons I told you before. The supply is dwindling and the demand is going up, not just from manufacturing, but all these other uses. And, I don't remember that long ago, 10 years ago, where, the procedure would be like anything else. Here's 10 options.
Mm-hmm.
Let's narrow it down to 5 or 6. Let's go out, take a look at it. We'll pick the number 1, and in 4 months, I'll have you in the space.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're lucky to find 1, maybe 2 spaces. And a lot of times, companies will call us with a 6-month deadline to need to be in space. And we have to turn to them and say, the space just doesn't exist right now. And then the other thing that a lot of manufacturers are dealing with is because there has been so much rent appreciation over these years. Some of these tenants are coming off of 7-10-year leases, and they're, poking their head out of the woodwork and finding out that their rent for the same space has either doubled or tripled. And so there's a lot of decisions that I don't think, specifically with manufacturers, didn't realize they'd even be making until they come to talk to us and realize, oh my goodness.
You mentioned the escalating rent. So do you have numbers you can share?
Oh yeah. Let's take Central 128 just as an example.
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk to a tenant that's maybe coming off of space where they've been in a lease and, they're paying $12 a square foot, triple net.
Mm-hmm.
That was commonplace, 5-10 years ago. Now that same space could be $20 triple net. It could be $23 triple net. So it's not an exaggeration when I say it could be double and triple. And then they have to make that decision. It's all a matter of compromise.
Mm-hmm.
Do you pay the freight to remain in the area where you might have been for the last 20 years? Or do you move, further west, north, south to other areas? And now you risk, losing, employee retention and other things like that. So it's a pretty big, consideration for a lot of people.
So now I asked your suggestion for the tenants. What about for the landlords? I think if you look, in the commercial real estate market, you have landlords who really specialize, I just do only office, I do just the retail, I just focus only on manufacturing and all. So how this paradigm shift or change, how the landlords are responding to this?
A lot of the landlords, and this is also contributed to the problem, is so many of these industrial and flex buildings have sold, just because the values got so big. And if, you were a single building owner and you'd own it forever, it's time to retire. Somebody's going to come in and pay you so much more than you ever dreamed, a couple of years ago. But what comes with that is when you pay a premium for a building like that, you no longer could get, the $12 rents to justify your investment. So you've got to go in there and, improve it to justify the rents. And that's why, so many of these buildings have become life science, have become GNP, have become, high-tech robotics, companies. But the good news for the landlords is that there is so much diversity out there, is that the space is always going to be demand, especially, single-story product, in Massachusetts, regardless of what it is, even retail and flex industrial, it's just, that's what everybody wants right now. So.
Okay. Now, for some of us who are not really very savvy about this type of spaces, so you have manufacturing space, you have industrial space, you have a warehouse space, you have all the R&D and the lab.
Right.
If for a layman, if you can just explain the difference between these types.
Probably its simplest terms, warehouse, at least in Massachusetts, is probably anything over 16 foot of, what we call clear height, the ceiling height. And the reason for that is for racking. And, if you're storing things, you're going vertical, and whatnot. And when we talk about flex space, it's usually, there's no hard and true, criteria, but let's call it, 16 feet and under, where it's a little bit lower. But, if you're a manufacturer and you have bigger equipment, you're going to need higher ceilings than, say, an office space, maybe 12-foot clear is. And usually, the preference is for it to be on the first floor for some sort of loading component, whether that's a loading dock or a drive-in door or whatever. That's what everybody is looking for these days.
And what about power? I think that's how
power is. Power is has become a very big component. Years ago, power was a big deal too, to run these machines that weren't necessarily efficient. But now when it comes to, battery manufacturing and robotics, and the GNP, the power just, needs to be extremely robust, especially to run all this equipment, not only for the operation, but just, GNP, for instance, and to have create an environment that's extremely clean, filtration and HVAC and all those things, they require an awful lot of power. So a lot of landlords, if they have the ability to do that, even if they don't have the power coming into their building, they'll contract with, say Eversource or something like that. And if it's in the street, they'll come in and boost the power. But that's also taking, the timeline to get that done, can take upwards to a year. So we have a bunch of clients that will find the right building and say, hey, this is great, I can move in tomorrow, but the power's just not there for them. And they're able to do it, but it's a long process.
Yeah. Now, so we know that, the R.W. Holmes has been in business for 45 years. Yeah. I think one of the very few still independently owned commercial brokerage firms. You have been there for more than 20 years there.
Yeah, I think next year is 25.
25 years, yes, it's a long time.
Yeah.
So tell us, what really distinguishes R.W. Holmes from other brokerage firms?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think the average person actually has been there for, 20 years. And a lot of people, are going on 40 years, which is great. And a lot of us, it's the only job we've known.
Yeah.
And so we're a family. We're about as close as you can imagine. But, it's the ability to remain independent and be flexible and not be pigeonholed into, you are just an office broker. This is your only territory. It allows us to adapt to the market and where we see the trends going, and also the collaboration within the group. Everybody, there's just so much combined experience that, it's easy to team up with somebody to go into a market that maybe you've got the expertise for the business, but you don't know that market very well, but to team up with somebody else in the business who's, that's their bread and butter, and, and just kind of service the client.
No, excellent. And congratulations for 45 years.
Yeah.
Being that keeping that independence is very, very important. Where these days, every day is, for everyone is for a grab. Right?
Yeah.
That's what has happened in the Boston market as well as
Yeah.
most other markets. Now, before I let you go, since we started with manufacturing, your last word on the manufacturing market in Greater Boston.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see that demand, going away anytime soon. It's still very much pent up. And we've got clients that, we spent well over a year looking for the right space for them. And so, as you said before, I mean, if I had any advice to anybody, it's the old adage of only waiting, 6 months, 4 months. No, it's years ahead to understand, get educated of what's out there, make some of those hard decisions beforehand. Do I want to stay where I am and maybe, suffer at a higher rental rate, or am I willing to branch outside of geography based and go to another area that might be, more conducive to my needs? So those are all things that you got to consider, and that's pretty much what we do.
Excellent. Dean,
Awesome.
thank you so much. It was
Thanks,
really,
Andrew.
learned so much, and thanks for